From co-owning a French castle with just $72 each, to buying an entire mall and turning it into a school, these are the weirdest real estate deals humans have ever pulled off. Necker Island, British Virgin Islands. Most people first hear about Necker Island because of its crystal clear water, celebrity guests, and $5,000 a night price tag. But the real reason this place is interesting is because of how Richard Branson managed to buy it for the cost of a small house when it was originally priced like a royal palace. In 1978, Branson owned a small mail-order record business named Virgin Records. He didn't own a house. He definitely didn't have the money lying around that you can use to buy an island. Then, someone mentioned that there were islands for sale in the British Virgin Islands. The name Virgin was already attached to his company, so he thought of giving it a chance and buying the place. The clever thing he did was that he didn't call the realtor for information. He called and said he wanted to propose to his girlfriend there, and somehow, instead of being laughed off the phone, he was offered an all-expenses-paid trip to see the islands in person. When Branson landed on Necker Island for the first time, he fell for the place instantly. But then he heard the price tag. The discounted asking price was $6 million. Branson didn't have millions. What he did have was boldness. He offered $100,000, which was the maximum he could possibly afford. But his offer was flat-out rejected, and Branson and his guest were left to make their own way home. That should have been the end of it. But the interesting thing that makes this deal so wild is that the island sat on the market for a full year with no buyers. Eventually, the seller was desperate to offload it. By then, Virgin Records was doing much better financially. Branson was contacted again, and this time the price wasn't $6 million, it was just $180,000. That was a 97% discount from the original ask. There was one condition: he had to build a resort within 4 years. For Branson, that was no problem. He signed the deal, and Necker Island officially became his private retreat. Over the years, it turned into a beautiful and luxurious resort that has hosted A-list names, including Barack Obama. And remember the woman he was trying to impress? The island trip clearly worked. He married her there 11 years later. Well, Branson managed to seal this deal all by himself. The next weirdest real estate purchase was a team effort. Château de la Mothe, France. In this deal, thousands of people joined forces to buy a castle. Some say 9,000 were involved, others say it was over 11,000. Either way, it was way more than you would expect to see on a property deed. The property in question is Château de la Mothe Chandelier. It used to be a crumbling but stunning French castle with a history stretching back to the 13th century. Sitting in the countryside of western France, it had all the drama you could want: a moat, a history of surviving invasions, wild aristocratic parties, and even a fire that destroyed the place in 1932. By the 2000s, it was barely hanging on. Marc Demeyer was its most recent private owner, and he had bought it in 1981 with big dreams of restoring it. But restoring a massive medieval castle is not just a weekend project, it's an endless money pit. After years of trying and failing to save it, Demeyer was so fed up that he once admitted he felt tempted to declare it a ruin, so it could be torn down completely. Developers were circling, and it looked like this centuries-old castle was about to be flattened. That's when two French heritage groups, D'Artagnans and Adopt un Château, came up with a clever idea. They thought that if no single person could afford to save it, maybe thousands of people could. They launched a crowdfunding campaign in late 2017 with a goal of raising 500,000 euros, or about $590,000 to buy the castle, its outbuildings and surrounding land. The extra money would go toward restoring it and turning it into a self-sustaining attraction. As soon as the news got out, the internet showed up in force. People from all over the world pitched in, each giving at least 50 euros or around $58 to officially adopt the castle. For 60 euros, donors got a fancy castle ownership box, complete with a membership card and certificate, so they could prove to friends that they really did own part of a French chateau. Within weeks, the campaign smashed its target. Nearly 900,000 euros were raised from more than 11,000 people. It was enough not just to buy the place, but to give it a fighting chance at restoration. Each contributor became a co-owner, and a company was set up solely to manage the castle on behalf of this massive international ownership group. And no, these thousands of owners are not all moving in. Instead, they will have a say in the restoration plans and will be first in line for special events once the chateau is open to visitors. The project aims to bring in up to 70,000 visitors a year. It will host exhibitions, historical reenactments, and even rent the castle out to film crews. In other words, it's going from abandoned relic to tourist hotspot, all thanks to a collective buy-in from strangers. If thousands of strangers joining forces to save a French castle sounds unusual, what happened in Texas will blow your mind. Highland Mall, Texas. Highland Mall in Austin had all the classic signs of retail death by 2015. Empty storefronts, flickering lights, and that strange silence that haunts abandoned shopping centers across America. Most people walking through those hollow corridors probably figured demolition was inevitable. After all, that's what happens to dead malls. They get bulldozed, turned into parking lots, and forgotten. But someone at Austin Community College was looking at those 1.2 million square feet of vacant retail space and thinking something completely different. Something that would either be brilliant or completely insane. Highland Mall opened back in 1971 as Austin's retail paradise. This was the city's first enclosed shopping center. It was anchored by the big names everyone knew, including JCPenney, Dillard's, and Scarborough's. Families made weekend trips to Highland like it was a destination vacation. Kids rode the escalators until security told them to stop. Parents browsed department stores while teenagers enjoyed themselves in the food court. For decades, Highland was where Austin went to shop and socialize. Then, the inevitable happened. Newer, shinier shopping centers started opening around the city. Each new mall that opened meant fewer customers for Highland. By the 2000s, you could walk through Highland and count more empty storefronts than occupied ones. The writing was on the wall, written in store closing signs and 4 lease banners. When Highland officially shut down in 2015, most observers expected the familiar ending. Demolition crews would roll in and reduce everything to rubble. But Austin Community College saw an opportunity. Instead of seeing a dead mall, they saw the largest adaptive reuse opportunity in Austin's history. They started quietly buying up pieces of the mall property throughout the 2010s. They were assembling what would become one of the most audacious education projects anyone had attempted. But, converting a shopping mall into a college campus is not supposed to work. Malls are built for completely different purposes than schools. The floors were designed for clothing racks and shoe displays, not chemistry labs and heavy equipment. The acoustics were calibrated for background music and casual conversation, not lectures and group discussions. And let's be honest, 1970s construction wasn't exactly built to last forever. Any reasonable development team would have recommended tearing the whole thing down and starting fresh. But the architects, BGK Architects, working with Perkins and Will, decided to do something that seems like architectural magic. They kept nearly 80% of the original structure intact. Instead of fighting against Highland's retail DNA, they worked with it. Former anchor stores became specialized learning facilities. The old food court transformed into student collaboration spaces. Even those wide mall corridors became perfect for moving students between classes. The environmental impact alone made this approach worth celebrating. By avoiding demolition and rebuilding, they prevented 11,250 tons of CO2 from entering the atmosphere. That's the equivalent of taking about 2,400 cars off the road for a year. Not only that, ACC reimagined the entire surrounding area as a mixed-use development. Those massive parking lots became residential complexes and retail spaces. The central area transformed into a community hub called the Paseo, where locals gather for events, farmers markets, and outdoor concerts. Walking through the campus today, you can still spot remnants of Highlands Mall days if you know what to look for. But instead of that depressing mall silence, the corridors are filled with energetic students. The project became an international case study in mall resurrection. Urban planners visit from other cities to study how Austin pulled this off. Communities dealing with their own dead malls send delegations to see what's possible when you refuse to accept that demolition is the only option. Highland Mall died as a shopping center in 2015, but it was reborn as something much more valuable. If turning a dead mall into a college campus feels like a big win, you need to hear about this 800-year-old fortress that was transformed from a medieval stronghold to a luxury hotel. Ashford Castle, Ireland. This wild purchase was made by Beatrice and Stanley Tallman. Their €20 million gamble in 2013 seemed almost reckless at the time. They were buying an 800-year-old Irish castle that needed massive investment in a remote location with no guarantee that luxury travelers would make the journey. But what happened became one of hospitality's greatest comeback stories. Ashford Castle has been impressive for centuries, but impressive doesn't always mean profitable. The beautiful castle is perched on the shores of Lough Corrib in County Mayo. It is surrounded by 350 acres of Irish countryside that looks like it was designed by tourism boards. The de Burgo family built the original fortified tower in 1228 after defeating the O'Connors in battle. They ended up creating a stronghold that would witness 8 centuries of Irish history. The castle passed through noble families like a very expensive heirloom. Each owner added their own architectural flourishes. But the real transformation came in 1852 when Sir Benjamin Lee Guinness purchased the property and decided to create something spectacular. The Guinnesses made Ashford a Victorian showpiece by adding turrets, beautiful gardens, and enough grandeur to make visiting royalty feel at home. By 1939, even the Guinness fortune couldn't justify maintaining such an enormous private residence. The family sold Ashford to the Irish government for £20,000, or about $27,000, which sounds like a bargain, but not so much if you consider the maintenance costs that come with owning a medieval castle. The government converted it into a hotel, figuring that paying guests might help offset the astronomical upkeep expenses. For decades, Ashford operated as a respectable country hotel, welcoming guests who wanted to sleep in genuine castle surroundings. But respectable doesn't necessarily mean exceptional, and by the early 2010s, the property was showing its age. This is where the Tolman family's vision separated them from ordinary hotel investors. Red Carnation Hotels had built their reputation on transforming historic properties into world-class destinations. But Ashford represented their biggest challenge yet. When they purchased the castle for €20 million or $23.4 million, most industry observers thought they had overpaid for a beautiful property that would drain their money. The Tolmans proved everyone wrong, but not without taking financial risks first. They committed $88 million to renovations. It was nearly 4 times what they had paid for the property. They were essentially rebuilding Ashford's entire guest experience while preserving its historic character. The renovation process took incredible precision. Every improvement had to respect the castle's medieval origin while meeting modern luxury expectations. They expanded to 83 rooms and suites. They also added a world-class spa, a 9-hole golf course, and fine dining at Wilde's restaurant that could compete with Dublin's best establishments. But the real genius was in the activities they created. Ashford now offers falconry lessons, horseback riding through ancient forests, and lake cruises that make guests feel like they're living inside Irish folklore. These experiences justify premium pricing and create memories worth bragging about. The transformation's success exceeded every reasonable expectation. Forbes Travel Guide awarded Ashford 5-star status. It placed it among the world's most prestigious hotels. Celebrity guests started arriving in waves, including Pierce Brosnan, Taylor Swift, Brad Pitt, and Barack Obama. When Rory McIlroy chose Ashford for his wedding, it became the ultimate endorsement for luxury travelers worldwide. The financial results justified every euro of investment. Rooms are now offered at €800 or $937 per night minimum. The top suites reach several thousand. The castle's estimated value has climbed to €150 to €200 million, or about $175 to $234 million. The project also gained Hollywood credibility, with filming credits including The Quiet Man, The Tudors, and multiple other productions drawn to its authentic medieval atmosphere. What started as a $1 million gamble became proof that historic preservation and luxury hospitality can create extraordinary value if you have the right vision. Finally, we have the story of a real estate win that dragged a giant abandoned shell back to life and turned it into one of London's hottest places to be. Battersea Power Station, London. Battersea Power Station has been London's sleeping giant since 1983, when the last turbines finally shut down after decades of powering the city. Those 4 white chimneys had become more famous than the landmarks. They had kept the lights on at Buckingham Palace, guided World War II pilots home through their smoke, and powered a fifth of London for half a century. But fame doesn't pay maintenance bills, and maintaining a building the size of several football fields turned out to be financially impossible. For 3 decades, Battersea became London's most expensive white elephant. Developers circled like vultures, each one convinced they had found the magic solution. A theme park that was never opened, a football stadium that never got built. Michael Jackson once pitched turning it into his personal Neverland, complete with a Ferris wheel inside the building. Every grand plan collapsed because the restoration costs were too much. Nobody could figure out how to make money from a building designed to house massive electrical equipment. By 2014, most Londoners had accepted that those iconic chimneys would eventually crumble into Thameside ruins. Then a Malaysian consortium, Sime Darby Property, SP SEDA, and the Employees Provident Fund shocked everyone by paying $2.1 billion for the entire 42-acre site. Property experts called it financial suicide. Architecture critics predicted another failed vanity project. Even supporters wondered if foreign investors truly understood what they had bought. But 8 years later, those skeptics were eating their words in very expensive restaurants inside the restored power station. The Malaysian team brought in Wilkinson Eyre architects, who helped transform Battersea into a destination while preserving everything that made it iconic. They couldn't just gut the interior and start over. That would destroy the building's soul. Instead, they had to work around the massive turbine foundations, preserve the Art Deco details, and somehow create modern spaces inside a structure built for industrial machinery. Each of the 4 chimneys was carefully dismantled, cleaned, and rebuilt to exact specifications. The colossal turbine halls, which were big enough to hold cathedrals, were converted into shopping and dining complexes. Turbine Hall A retained its 1930s Art Deco grandeur, while Turbine Hall B showcased the grittier 1950s industrial aesthetic. But the real masterstroke was Lift 109. It is a glass elevator installed inside the northwest chimney that carries visitors 109 meters above London. This was a genius repurposing. Since 2022, more than 23 million visitors have passed through Battersea's doors, making it one of London's most popular destinations. The 150 shops, restaurants, and bars create foot traffic that most retail developments can only dream about. Property values in the surrounding area have skyrocketed, with celebrity buyers like Sting and Bear Grylls purchasing apartments in the new residential towers. The transportation infrastructure alone represented a massive bet on Battersea's future. A new Northern Line extension transformed accessibility completely, with the station dropping visitors directly at the power station's doorstep. What once required lengthy bus rides from central London became a quick tube journey. The restoration proved that even the most impossible historic preservation projects can succeed with adequate funding and expert execution. Battersea Power Station died as an industrial facility in 1983, but it was spectacularly reborn as proof that London's past and future can coexist profitably. If you think these were crazy and weird purchases, wait until you hear what lottery winners purchase as soon as they get their millions. Don't miss our next video. The ridiculous stuff you'll see will blow your mind.